Travis Kelce had already done it earlier, late last year, made it to 1,000 receptions, but there were three more that made it this year. Keenan Allen, Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins all made it. All right. Welcome to Just the Stats NFL Top 10's for Tuesday. I'm Ernie Jennings, your host, and today we're going to continue looking at some of the games from Sunday. We're going to start with the very last game of the night. That was probably the best game, whether it was on Saturday or Sunday, but definitely the best game on Sunday. It was very entertaining, back and forth type of game. The Houston game was also pretty entertaining. Indianapolis and Houston, that was a back and forth game as well. But that last game on Sunday night, prime time, that was really an entertaining game. Now, I did cover the Saturday games on a special podcast on Sunday. So if you wanted to hear about the two games on Saturday, you can go to my podcast, which was a top 10s for Sunday. You can find that on YouTube or whatever app you listen to podcasts on. And you'll be able to listen to that podcast, talk about those two games. And then I did 5 games yesterday for Monday, 5 of the NFL games that were on Sunday. So now I'm going to do some more. I only have a couple left by the time I get done with this podcast. But I did want to get the Houston game plus this Sunday night game between Baltimore and Pittsburgh in this time. I'm pretty sure I'll get the Houston game in here. And then tomorrow we'll just have a couple left over, plus then we'll start looking at season stats. So with all that, let's get started. And as I said, we'll start with this Baltimore going to Pittsburgh. This was a winner-take-all for real, unlike the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning their game and then finding out they're still not going to the playoffs. But yeah, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, the winner goes to the playoffs, the loser goes home. And that happened to be Baltimore. Very tough game. Pittsburgh wins it 26-24. And it was just, like I said, a fun game to watch. Halftime, it's 10-3. Baltimore kind of had the lead, but then Pittsburgh put up 10 points in the third quarter to pull it out into the lead. And then at the end there, Ravens come back with another 14 points, but Pittsburgh put up 13 of their own. What a crazy ending to this game. Man, Baltimore actually jumps out to the lead toward the end of the game with only, less than 2.5 minutes to go in the game. They pull into the lead 24-20. Pittsburgh comes right down the field. They score a touchdown to go up 26-24. All they need is an extra point to pretty much guarantee, because at that point there was only 55 seconds left in the game. The kicker misses the extra point. It was blocked. Unbelievable. So now this kicker hadn't missed a extra point in 4 years, I think is what they said. So now it's 26-24. All Baltimore needs to do is go down the field within field goal range, kick a field goal, and win the game by a point. And they basically do most of that except for the very last, most important part, kicking the field goal and making it. And I did not understand the play calls. I got, for most of the time, they didn't even use all their timeouts. With about 9 to 11 seconds to go in the game, they're around a kick where he's going to kick it about 42 yards. Instead of trying to get an extra however many yards, anywhere from 5 to 10 extra yards, just to make it a little easier, especially in that field, you could see the ball the way it was swerving. They just snapped the ball. Lamar Jackson kind of shifts over where I guess the kicker wanted him to be and puts his knee down. Now, instead of gaining any yards at all, whether you ran the ball or not, because they could have called timeout, now you're even 2 yards back. So the field goal kicker gets up there and he misses the field goal. Game over. Baltimore loses. And Pittsburgh is now on their way to the playoffs. And actually, they'll be playing a home game against the Houston Texans. That should be a pretty tough game there. Good thing for Pittsburgh is Houston has to come up to Pittsburgh and play there. So let's look at that game. In this game, Pittsburgh had 24 first downs to Baltimore's 12. Big difference there. But in yardage, total net yards, Pittsburgh had 390. Baltimore had 359. Now, net yards rushing is kind of interesting here. Baltimore had 137 net yards rushing to 100 for Pittsburgh. What's interesting about that is Derrick Henry had about 100 yards at halftime. So they end up with only about 37 yards rushing in the whole second half. And honestly, I don't know why, because they were actually winning the game at halftime. Going into the third quarter, they're winning. So why that happened, I don't know. The decisions on the play calling there. Mostly it had to do with Pittsburgh just starting to dominate time of possession, and there was not a lot that Baltimore could do about it. And when you look at that time of possession, particularly 34 minutes, a little over 34 minutes for Pittsburgh, less than 26 for Baltimore. Another key difference here, which is often the case, third down efficiency for Baltimore, 4 out of 12. That's 33%. They did go for it on fourth down twice and made it. So that helped their numbers, basically 6 out of 14 on third and fourth down. But Pittsburgh, 9 of 16 on third down, that's 56%, and 1 out of 2 on fourth down, that's 50. So they went 10 of 18, better than 50% going for it on third and fourth down for first downs. The amount of total plays in this game was way different as well. Pittsburgh had 73 plays in this game to only 48 for Baltimore. So that kind of gives you a reason why there were so many first downs for Pittsburgh. And with their style of offense, when you think about it, the way everything's a dink and dunk for the most part, there was a couple of big passes, but for Aaron Rodgers, but mostly, he loves to throw those little dinky passes out to the running backs or the tight ends and so forth. And that's so you just inch your way down the field, basically. So let's look at the quarterbacks. And you can see this huge difference in the style of play between these two quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson, only 11 completions on 18 attempts. But in those 11 completions for 238 yards, that's over 13 yards an attempt. That's one of the highest numbers I've seen this year. 3 touchdowns, so 11 completions, 3 of them for touchdowns. That's a high percentage as well. Just better than 1 out of 4 was a touchdown. Had 1 interception though. His longest pass was 64-yard touchdown bomb. He was sacked 3 times. He ended up with a quarterback rating of 121.5. Really good. They were questioning his either effort or his desire to lead this team, but he showed he really was into this game. It was a tough loss for the Ravens. It was a tough loss for either team, whoever would have lost, and that was the Ravens, but it was just such a tight, close game. Now, Aaron Rodgers, on the other hand, 31 completions on 47 attempts, so way more passes, 3 times more passes almost. 294 yards, but 6.3 yards per attempt. So less than half the yards per attempt of Lamar Jackson. Had 1 touchdown, no interceptions, was sacked twice. He had a quarterback rating of 90.2. So that's not too bad. He was thrilled at the end of that game, man, hugging the coach. They're going to the playoffs. Now, Derrick Henry, 20 carries, 126 yards, 6.3 yards a carry. Really had a good game. But like I said, he had about 100 of those at halftime. So in the second half, 26 yards. I do not know what was really the reason for that, Other than that, he pretty much dominated the running. I mean, Lamar Jackson, 4 carries, but 9 yards. Now for Pittsburgh, Jaylen Warren, 14 carries for 66 yards. That's 4.7 yards a carry. Aaron Rodgers, believe it or not, had 1 carry for 20 yards. Pretty good. And then Kenny Gainwell, also the other running back, 5 carries for 10 yards. He was more of the receiver in this game. Now looking at the receivers for Baltimore, it was Zay Flowers, only had 4 catches on 6 targets, but out of those 4 catches, 138 yards. Jackson had 238 yards passing, 138 went to Zay Flowers. The other 100 went to 4 other people, really. Mark Andrews had 2 for 14. This is 2 tight ends. None of the running backs had a catch. Of course, that's Henry. He doesn't normally catch a pass anyway. Now, for Pittsburgh Steelers, like I said, Kenny Gainwell, he led the team with 8 catches for 64 yards. So 64 yards plus another 10. He had 74 yards of offense for him, 8 catches. And then Valdez-Scantling had 5 for 34. Jaylen Warren, the other running back, 5 for 33. So Jaylen Warren ended up with 99 yards of offense. Calvin Austin did have a 26-yard touchdown pass. He was 3 catches for 55 yards. Now, let's look at some of the numbers in this game. Zay Flowers, he had 4 catches in this game. He ended his season with 86 catches, which is good enough for the Baltimore Ravens all-time 4th spot. So he's tied for 4th all-time in receptions with 86 in a season for the Baltimore Ravens. All right, now receptions for the career. Well, Mark Andrews already had set the record earlier in the year for most receptions in a career for the Baltimore Ravens. He now has 484. That's first. Zay Flowers jumped up into 5th. He has 237 receptions, which moved him into 5th spot, passing Mark Clayton. Next up is Zay Flowers again. This is receiving yards this time. He only needed 1 yard, but he ended up the season with 1,211 yards receiving, which moved him from 7th, because he had 138 yards. He went from 7th all the way to 2nd. The only person ahead of him is Mark Andrews, who in 2021 had 1,361 yards. So Zay Flowers moved up into the top or the 2nd spot. So you got 2 active players in the 1 and 2 spots for Baltimore Ravens in receiving yards in a season. You know, they just had a rough season this year as far as Lamar Jackson being in the game, not being in the games, and the way they used Derrick Henry partway through the season, I never did understand. He was dominating the second half of the season, or the last, say, 4, 5, 6 games. Now, looking at Zay Flowers and primarily, but Mark Andrews already as well, but Zay Flowers particularly, in receiving yards in his career. Well, Zay Flowers now is 5th all-time in receiving yards, passing Mark Clayton again, as well as Ray Rice. He now is in 5th all-time in receiving yards for the Baltimore Ravens with 3,128. And Mark Andrews had already set the record earlier in the season again. He now has 5,952. That's the number 1 receiver all-time for the Baltimore Ravens in receiving yards. Pretty amazing that is the highest. He's number 1 with less than 6,000 yards. All right, and the last one here, I think, Derrick Henry. He really did come on strong with his 126 yards. That gave him 3,516 yards for his career with the Baltimore Ravens, which is good enough to now put him into 4th place all-time in that category. He just passed Gus Edwards, who was with the team in 2023. So he's really had a pretty impressive career for the time he's been there. And unfortunately, the goal that they were looking for when they picked him up of going to the Super Bowl just has not quite materialized. Lamar Jackson has been in second for quite a while this season, all year. Second all time in rushing yards for the Baltimore Ravens. He now has 6,522. Paul Lewis leads the team with 7,801. So I don't think Lamar Jackson will ever catch him, nor will Derrick Henry. He's nearing the end of his career, and so that won't ever happen. Like I said, a very fun game to watch. I enjoyed it. And sad ending for the Ravens, but Pittsburgh, they get to move forward and take on the Houston Texans. And we'll look at the Houston Texans now. They had a nice tight game with the Indianapolis Colts. This has just been the predicament for the Colts these last several games. They played them pretty close, but they lost all their last 3-4 games. This was the same way, this game with Houston. Indianapolis goes into Houston, want to be the spoiler, and they just could not quite pull it off. They could not stop the Houston Oilers when they needed to. And they ended up losing this game 38-30. Now, this is the vaunted, I should say, Houston Texans defense that gave up 30 points in this game to the backup quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. They had a couple of big plays early on in this game. Alec Pierce caught one for 66 yards. He was wide open, nobody around him. Caught a 66-yard touchdown pass. The star for the Houston Texans was Fairbairn, their kicker. He had what did he have? 3, 4, 5, 6 field goals in this game. That's 18 of their points right there. 6 field goals for him. Now, Groupie, the other kicker, he had 3 of his own. But it was a very tight game. Indianapolis was winning at losing 23-17, so it was close. Houston pulls ahead after the third quarter. The Indianapolis Colts pull ahead 27-26. It was very close, like I said. And then they have a field goal in the fourth quarter, but Houston Texans put up 12 points in the fourth quarter to pull ahead. And honestly, the last touchdown they got was an interception, basically stripped the quarterback, the Indianapolis Colts quarterback, stripped the ball from him and ran it in at the end of the game to get that extra score, which made it 38. It was honestly, right up till the end of the game, it was 32-30, and the Colts needed to get down close enough for a field goal, but they ran out of time. They just didn't have the time to do it. And, they tried a trick play. Well, it ended up backfiring. And Tommy Togaya, the defensive player, just grabbed the ball, ran it in 17 yards for a fumble return touchdown, which added that extra 6 points onto the score. Let's look at some of these numbers. And as I said, this was a very close game. Houston, 22 first downs. Indianapolis, 19. Net yards, Houston 339, the Colts 354. Unfortunately for them, Jonathan Taylor just couldn't put up the numbers they were hoping for. The team had 76 rushing yards. That's it. Now, looking at a couple other numbers in this game. So let's look at the quarterbacks. Riley Leonard came in for the Colts and played 21 completions on 34 attempts for 270 yards, 8 yards an attempt, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He was only sacked once. He had a quarterback rating of 94. Honestly, he played quite well, I thought. Especially, like I said, this is the Houston defense, supposed to be the number 1 defense in the NFL. And he put up some good numbers against them. For Houston, C.J. Stroud, on the other hand, was not completely impressed with him. C.J. Stroud, 14 completions on 23 attempts for 169 yards. That's 7.3 yards an attempt, 1 touchdown. Did have a quarterback rating of 97.9. Was not sacked. They rushed him a little bit, hurried him, but they could not get him down. Same with Davis Mills, but by the time Davis Mills is in there, they're trying to hold on to the ball a little bit more. But Davis Mills had 3 completions on 9 attempts for 36 yards, quarterback rating of 46.5. Now running for the Indianapolis Colts, like I said, Jonathan Taylor, 14 carries, 26 yards. I don't know what happened, whether it's the line, offensive line, or Taylor ran out of steam, or more likely than either one of those is that when it was Phillip Rivers or Riley Leonard, there's no respect for the quarterback, and so they're just stacking the line waiting for Jonathan Taylor, and it's just doubly difficult for him to run against that type of a situation. The other running back, DJ Giddens, had 8 carries for 30 yards. So not much happening there. Riley Leonard did run it 3 times for 21 yards himself. 1 was for a touchdown. Now for the Texans, British Brooks, 13 carries for 63 yards. That's 4.85 yards a carry. Woody Marks, 10 carries for 48 yards. That's 4.8. Pretty good there. And then C.J. Stroud had 2 carries for 5 yards, but one of them was for a running touchdown. So the quarterback scored the touchdowns in this game. Now for the Colts, Tyler Warren, 5 catches for 26 yards, led the team in receptions, but Alec Pierce, 4 catches, 132 yards. He was really impressive. He got open a lot, had 2 touchdown passes. One was 66 yards. He is a free agent, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see whether he stays with the team or not or moves on. I wouldn't think they'd really want to let him go. He stretches the field quite well for the Colts. So we'll see what happens with that. For the Houston Texans, Nico Collins did not play. Xavier Hutchinson had 5 catches for 84 yards to lead the team in catches and receptions and yards. Dalton Schultz had 4 catches for 73 yards. Those are your top 2. No one else had more than 2 catches in the game. All right, let's look at some of the numbers. Pretty interesting here with the Indianapolis Colts when it comes to tackles for loss. Now, DeForest Buckner's been out most of the season, but he leads the team, this current team, with 57 tackles for loss that he's had this year. But they have 5 total players, including Buckner, in the top 10 as far as tackles for loss go. That's incredible. Now, some of these guys have been around a little while, since 2017, Grover Stewart and Kenny Moore. Grover Stewart has 45. Kenny Moore has 37. Whit Pay, who's been on the team since 2021, he already has 37. And then Zaire Franklin, he had 2 tackles for loss in this game to put him up to 34, which puts him into 10th spot all time for the team. That was the 5th player to make it into the top 10. They've had an impressive group of people. Now, looking at the quarterback, C.J. Stroud for the Texans, he had 1 touchdown pass. He now had 19 for the season. Not bad for a player who has missed several games. So 19 is good enough to time for 9th best season of passing touchdowns for the Houston Texans. 19, tied with Brian Hoyer and Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson in 2017 had 19. In 2020, Deshaun Watson had 33, which is the all-time record for the Houston Texans. I think there's a possibility C.J. Stroud, if he stays healthy in the entire season, could possibly get to 33 at some point. Now, looking at their kicker, put him in here because he became the number 1 kicker for most points in a single season for the Houston Texans. Like I said, he had 6 field goals and 2 extra points for 20 points in this game. So he went from 3rd to 1st. It was quite impressive. He ends up with 160 points this season, which is good enough to put him at number 1 all time in the Houston Texans for a single season points scored. That was a good game. Now these other games, man, you just not a lot to say. Let's look at the New York Jets and the Buffalo Bills. As I said, there's not a lot here. Listening to one guy, the Jets didn't even bother to show up for this game. They did score 8 points at the end of the game. Their season is shot, and I think they're going to keep their coach. And I know they don't have a quarterback. It's been a mess for their team all the way around. There's not a lot to say about this game. Buffalo didn't play a lot of players. Josh Allen came in, first play of the game, handed it off, and then left the game, and he was done. He wanted to continue his most games played in a row streak, which he's has right now. And so he just played that one play and was out. So we'll just look at the numbers here. There's not a lot to look at. Buffalo, 30 first downs. New York Jets, 9. Buffalo, 470 yards, net yards. The Jets, 122. That's just the way it went, this whole thing. Buffalo had the ball for 38 minutes and 20 seconds. Jets, 21 minutes, 40 seconds. So this was all Buffalo. Both teams just wanted to get this game over with. For Buffalo, Mitch Trubisky was the quarterback. Had a really good game, actually. 22 completions on 29 attempts, 4 touchdowns, and a quarterback rating of 142.1. Now for the Jets, it was Brady Cook came in, 11 completions for 22 attempts for only 60 yards, less than 3 yards an attempt. Did have a touchdown pass, quarterback rating of 71.4. I mean, the touchdown came halfway through the fourth quarter. For the Jets, Khalil Herbert, 12 carries for 42 yards. And for the Buffalo Bills, Davis was the primary running back. James Cook had 2 carries for 15 yards. That was all. He didn't really play much in the game. But Ray Davis, had 21 carries for 151 yards. So he had a really big game, over 7 yards a carry in this game. And then Ty Johnson had 13 carries for 36 yards and a touchdown. In the receiving department, for the Jets, Isaiah Williams had 5 catches, 24 yards. That led the team in receptions and yards. And then for Buffalo, Gabe Davis, 5 receptions for 41 yards and a touchdown. 3 other, Dawson Knox had a touchdown, Ty Johnson had a touchdown reception, and Ray Davis had a touchdown reception. So Ray Davis had a touchdown receiving, and then had 151 yards rushing, as well as 23 more. So he had 174 yards of offense in this game. So good game for him. But again, it was a bunch of backups. I mean, in this game, 10 different players caught a pass in their 22 receptions, with Gabe Davis having 5, which was the most. All right. Nothing to say about this game as far as top 10s go. There weren't any. Most of all the stars did not play. Breece Hall didn't play. Josh Allen didn't play. Cook only had 2 carries, so it didn't amount to anything. And that was the game. All right. Now let's look at the Detroit Lions. Tried to ruin the Chicago Bears number 2 spot. And they did their part. Detroit wins the game 19-16 in Chicago. But while they were doing that, the Eagles were losing to the Commanders. All they had to do was win, and they would have had the 2nd seed. But they did not win, so Chicago ends up maintaining that 2nd seed in the playoffs. Now, looking at this game, Detroit was out to a 16-0 lead before the Chicago Bears finally scored and actually tied the game up. Chicago tied this game up at 16 apiece. And at the very end of the game, Bates for Detroit kicks a field goal to win it 19-16. So they made an incredible comeback, Chicago that is, but not quite enough. Them and the Buffalo Bills have this And Denver's done a little bit. Well, Denver plays close games, but Buffalo and Chicago have this thing about coming back and winning games in the end, and it doesn't always pan out. And I do not think that approach is going to pan out in the playoffs. Probably not. Now, looking at this game, these quarterbacks did play. Jared Goff, 27 completions on 42 attempts for 331 yards, 8 yards an attempt, had 1 touchdown, 1 interception, had a quarterback rating of 86.5. These quarterbacks were close as far as that goes in quarterback rating. Caleb Williams, 20 completions on 33 attempts for 212 yards. That's 6.4 yards an attempt. He had 2 touchdowns and an interception. He had a quarterback rating of 86.9. Now for Detroit, Jahmyr Gibbs finally had a decent game. It's been rough for their running backs lately, but he had 19 carries for 80 yards. That's 4.2 yards a carry. And David Montgomery had 8 carries for 42 yards, which is 5.25 yards carries. 27 carries for 122 yards. That's 4.5 yards a carry. And then for Chicago Bears, DeAndre Swift, 10 carries for 40 yards. Kyle Mononegay, 6 carries for 14 yards. So not too good here. 18 total carries for 65 yards. That's 3.6 yards a carry. In the receiving department for Detroit, Amon-Ra St. Brown, 11 catches for 139 yards in this game. No touchdowns, though. Jameson Williams, 6 catches for 74 yards. He was second leading receiver. But it was Jahmyr Gibbs had 3 catches for 33 yards and a touchdown. So between 80 yards rushing and 33 yards, he had 113 yards of offense in this game. So pretty good game for him. Now for the Chicago Bears, Colston Loveland had a big game, his best game of the year. 10 catches for 91 yards and a touchdown. I mean, Williams had 20 completions in this game, and Colston Loveland had 10 of them. The next best was Luther Burden with 3 catches for 35 yards. Now, Ja'Day Walker had 2 catches for 36 yards and a touchdown. That was the other touchdown that Williams threw. All right, now let's look at some of the numbers in this game. Starting with Detroit quarterback Jared Goff. Came into this game in this season in 13th spot as far as most passing yards in a season. And he threw 331 yards of passing offense, and he ended up with 4,564 yards this season, which is good enough to jump him all the way up into 6th spot all time for the Detroit Lions in passing yards. Now, the benefactor of that was Amon-Ra St. Brown. Came into this game with 106 receptions, got 11 more in this game to jump up to 117 receptions, which is good enough to put him into 4th place all time for most receptions in a season for the Detroit Lions with 117. Now, as far as receiving yards, Amon-Ra St. Brown came into this game in 16th spot, but with 139 yards, that was able to give him 1,401 yards, which jumped him all the way up into 7th all time for most receiving yards in a single season for the Detroit Lions. Now, Calvin Johnson holds the record for the team and the NFL when in 2012 had 1,964 receiving yards. Now, looking at Chicago, the quarterback for that team, Caleb Williams, trying to get to 4,000 yards because no Chicago Bears quarterback has ever made it to 4,000 yards. Did not quite make it. He came up 58 yards short. So Caleb Williams had 212 yards of passing in this game. He ended up with 3,942, which is good enough for first spot all time for the Chicago Bears as far as passing yards in a single season. Not quite 4,000, maybe next year he'll get that number. But it was the best year so far for a Chicago Bear quarterback. In their history, 100-year history, no one's ever thrown for 4,000 yards in a season. Another number for Caleb Williams, and that's touchdown passes. He had 2 more in this game. He's now got 27, which ties him with Jay Cutler for 4th place all-time in passing touchdowns in a single season for the Chicago Bears. All right, let's look at another game here. We'll look at the LA Chargers and the Denver Broncos. Now, this was another game that I was hoping would be a good game, but the Chargers, knowing that they were going to be a wild card team no matter what, they sat their starters, and Herbert really needed to be sat. I mean, he had some aches and pains that gave him a chance to rest. So really, this wasn't much of a game. I mean, Denver wins it 19-3, but it was another one of those games where they're just trying to get the game over with. The Chargers defense played well, but with no offense, it makes it tough. And they were on the field quite a bit. I mean, Denver had the ball for 34 minutes to 26 for the LA Chargers. Well, yeah, looking at these numbers, total net yards, Denver 240. That's not too good, but Chargers had 217. So this was one of those games. I wonder how long the game took in actual time. Now, for the Chargers, Trey Lance was the quarterback. And, you wish he could have been a little bit better. 20 completions on 44 attempts, so that's under 50% for 136 yards. That's 3 yards an attempt. That's horrible. No touchdowns. Did have an interception. He was sacked 4 times. Ended up with a quarterback rating of 43.4. Bo Nix, 14 completions on 23 attempts. So, half the attempts, 6 fewer completions, and he put up 141 yards, which is 6 yards an attempt, which is double what Trey Lance did. I mean, it's not great, but it's way better than Trey Lance. He ended up with a quarterback rating of 78.4. For the Chargers, Trey Lance led the team in rushing as well. They had Kamani Vidal in the game, but that was it. He only rushed it 3 times. But Trey Lance had 9 carries for 69 yards. So he was running around a lot in this game. For Denver, is Bo Nix led the team in rushing yards with 49 on 8 attempts. RJ Harvey did have 15 carries, but only 28 yards in this game. So not very impressive rushing game out of either team, honestly. I mean, the quarterbacks were carrying the team there. Now, in the receiving department, this was Keenan Allen, one of his better games as far as receptions go. 7 catches, but only 36 yards, which is why. 7 catches, 36 yards. That's not many. That's only 5 yards a catch, a little over 5 yards. But anyway, he led the team. Again, most of their starters were out. Oronde Gatson was in. But otherwise, they were trying to keep everybody out and let them rest. Same for Denver Broncos. I mean, Cortland Sutton had 1 catch for 5 yards in this game. It was Pat Bryant had 4 catches for 31 yards to lead the team in receptions. Now, Evan Ingram led the team in yardage with 45. No one had a touchdown pass for either team. One of those games that just was uneventful, not too exciting, and the Denver Broncos win it. So in this game, Bo Nix had 141 yards passing, which gave him 3,931 yards, which is good enough. 8th all-time most passing yards in a single season for the Denver Broncos. And on a career-wise, that same 141 yards bumped him up to 8th place all-time passing yards in his career with 7,706 yards. So pretty good season for him. Second year, really had a good season, I thought. I mean, these second-year quarterbacks, between Drake May and Bo Nix particularly, and Williams, really impressive quarterbacks. And I think Daniels will be as well. Unfortunately for him, he was hurt a lot. But those are 4 good quarterbacks to watch, going into the future. Now, for the Denver Broncos, tackles for loss. Nick Bonito had another one. He's got 44 tackles for loss, which ties him for 6th place all time for tackles for loss for the Denver Broncos. Pretty impressive career. He's only been on the team since 2022. He's got 44 tackles for loss. He is a force. Now, do one more game here, I think. And that is the Kansas City Chiefs this versus the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders won this game, believe it or not. Again, this was a very uneventful, unexciting game. Field goals all over the place until the end of the game. The Raiders had a safety, and it was all field goals in this game. How fun was that to watch? Field goals, and then more field goals. Daniel Carlson kicked a 60-yarder at the end of the game to win it with only 8 seconds to go. 60-yard field goal to win, put the Las Vegas Raiders up 14-12. And that was the final score. I don't know how many fans were in the stands for this game. It'd be interesting to know. It said 61,780. I doubt it, seriously, in Las Vegas in Allegiant Stadium. Now, in this game, the Raiders had 12 first downs. Kansas City had 10. Raiders had 204 net yards. Kansas City had 168. Third down conversion. Kansas City, 3 out of 17 for 17%. Did make it one time on fourth down. Las Vegas, 4 for 16 for 25%. And tried it on fourth down twice and didn't make it. So 4 out of 18 basically for both of them. That's horrendous. Time of possession was basically equal. Now for the Kansas City Chiefs, Chris Oladokun was the primary quarterback, as well as Shane Buechele. They split the time as quarterbacks. And for Las Vegas Raiders, it was Aiden O'Donnell, and then Kenny Pickett was 1 for 4, but O'Donnell 10 for 22 for 102 yards. I mean, he led all quarterbacks. There were 4 quarterbacks in this game. He had 102 yards passing, which was the most. Not even really worth talking about. Same with the Kansas City Chiefs as far as running goes. Rashard Smith, 12 carries for 56 yards. He led the team in rushing attempts and yards. Now, for the Raiders, it was Ashton Genty. He ran it 26 out of the 32 times they ran the ball. He ran it 26 times for 87 yards, 3.35 yards a carry. Like I said, no touchdowns in this game at all. The only thing to mention in this game is the receivers, and that was Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce had 3 catches for 12 yards, and it was primarily the catches. He only needed 1 to tie Terrell Owens. He got 3, so he passed Terrell Owens to move into 8th place all-time in NFL history in most receptions in his career. He now has 1,080 receptions in his career in the NFL, which is good enough for 8th place all time. And that could be where he ends his career. Very impressive career. As I've been playing this out, there were 4 players. Travis Kelce had already done it earlier, late last year, made it to 1,000 receptions, but there were 3 more that made it this year. Keenan Allen, Devontae Adams, and DeAndre Hopkins all made it to the 1,000 reception mark, which was it's kind of a milestone. There had only been 15 players all time that had done it, and now there's 18. Just incredible. 18 players in NFL history who have had 1,000 or more receptions, and 4 of them are played this year. That's just amazing to me. What's interesting also is 3 of them all started their career in 2013. Travis Kelce, Keenan Allen, and DeAndre Hopkins all started their career in 2013. So what a class of receivers that is. And we'll see what happens with them. Now, Devontae Adams started his career in 2014. He's the only other one that I think will make it into the top 10. I don't know what's going to happen with Keenan Allen. He only needs 26 receptions to make it into the top 10. He's got 1,055, but, is another one to watch to see what happens if he ends his career or not. I mean, all the hoopla is around Travis Kelce, but honestly, Keenan Allen, if they both quit their career now, Keenan Allen ends with 22 fewer receptions than Travis Kelce in their entire career. That is very close. And of the three, I think it's DeAndre Hopkins has the most yards between those three. Fewer receptions, but more yards. So what a group of receivers altogether. All right, we'll wrap it up right there with that game. We only have a few more to go. We'll finish them up tomorrow. But wanted to get some more games in. Appreciate you listening. Please like and subscribe. You can find this podcast on YouTube at Just the Stats NFL. You can watch it there, as well as see the charts that I put up to go along with what I'm talking about. That way you're not just looking at me, which is a great thing. And then you can also listen to it, of course, when you're driving or whatever you like to listen to podcasts on Apple, Spotify, whatever app you use. If you happen to listen to this and you want to listen to it on some podcast device or app or whatever, and you can't find it, let me know and I'll make sure it gets on there. But most of them run through Apple or Spotify. So if they have it, they pick it off of them. All right. Again, appreciate you listening. And until tomorrow, I'm out for NFL Top 10s for Tuesday. I'll see you tomorrow.